This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Should I break into this, Seth?
Yeah, please do.
Chapter 40, Damane. And our symbol is the Adom. Is Adom right? I just realized I have never checked Adom.
Did you know that was the Adom looking at the chapter header, or did you think that was like a figure 8?
For some reason, when I saw it, I thought it was one of the Dream Terangrial.
Okay.
Do we have an image of that?
Yeah, we've got the spiral. That's definitely one of the chapter headers, is the spiral stone Dream Terangrial.
Yeah, but I think it looks a little different.
It does.
Egwene dismounted as the Waygate opened, and when Liandrin motioned them through, she led the shaggy mare carefully out. Even so, she and Bella both stumbled in brush flattened by the opening Waygate, as they suddenly seemed to be moving even more slowly. So they all emerge and come out of the Waygate, and armored men, at least 50 of them with overlapping steel plates down their chests and dull black helmets shaped like insects' heads, sat their saddles or stood beside their horses, staring at her and the emerging women, staring at the Waygate, muttering among themselves.
And we know when we see insect-shaped heads, you immediately think Seanchan.
Yeah, these are Seanchan soldiers. Suroth, who is...
Dark Friend alert.
Yeah, Suroth, who is a Dark Friend and of the Seanchan blood, has apparently previously made this deal with Liandrin. The whole thing was set up by Ishamael?
The whole thing, I believe, was set up by Ishamael. There's a line here where Liandrin says, "The High Lady Suroth," Liandrin said, making it halfway between a question and a statement. So if they'd met before and made this deal, I think she would know exactly who she was.
So we've never met before, but this meeting was arranged to remove Egwene and Nynaeve from the continent because they're a part of Rand's it. They're a part of it, in Moraine's words.
They're in his Terangrial web, and he is going to use them to stop the Dark One.
He needs them. There were women with the soldiers, too. 2 wore plain, dark gray dresses and wide silver collars, and stood staring intently at those coming out of the Waygate, each with another woman close behind her as if ready to speak into her ear. 2 other women, standing a little apart, wore wide, divided skirts that came well short of their ankles, and panels embroidered with forked lightning bolts on their bosoms and skirts. Oddest of all was the last woman, reclining on a palanquin, borne by 8 muscular, bare-chested men in baggy black trousers. The sides of her scalp were shaved so that only a wide crest of black hair remained to fall down her back. A long, cream-colored robe worked in flowers and birds and blue ovals was carefully arranged to show her skirts of pleated white, and her fingernails were a good inch long. The first 2 on each hand lacquered blue.
You got 4 Sul'dam and 2 Damane standing there.
Yeah.
Behind them is a Suroth on the palanquin being carried by a bunch of slaves.
And this is when they sort of introduce themselves. You can tell Liandrin and Suroth hate each other right off the bat, pretty much.
Suroth thinks Liandrin should be collared in Damane, and that's immediately going to set them off against each other.
Yeah, but they do already know each other's names.
And I assume that's because they've been given orders, probably in their dreams, by... I don't think it was at the Dark Friend Social. It was just Ishamael giving them orders in their dreams and setting up this meeting.
Yeah. These are the 2 of whom you were told, and there is another. She nodded toward Elayne.
I noticed they don't really care that she's the daughter heir. They're not interested in her at all.
The 2 women with lightning on their dresses were approaching the party in front of the Waygate. They carried coils of some silvery metal in their hands, Egwene noticed, and the bare-headed soldier came with them. "Liandrin Saidin," she said urgently. "Who are these people?"
And Liandrin's just ignoring them. They're not even people anymore.
Not even looking at them.
She's just totally dismissed them. And, Egwene's watching nervously, but Liandrin's not agitated, or else she would have just gotten the hell out of there. So she's sort of making a mistake in that she's still trusting Liandrin at this point.
Yeah, they think she's a real Aes Sedai.
I think Nynaeve catches on a little bit faster than Egwene does.
Nynaeve doesn't trust anyone.
No. Yeah, and she definitely doesn't trust any Aes Sedai.
Yeah. The hook-nosed man suddenly seized Min and Elayne by the scruffs of their necks, and in the next instant, everything seemed to happen at once. The man yelled a curse because Min stabbed him, and a woman screamed, or perhaps more than one woman. Egwene could not be sure. Abruptly, the breeze was a gale that whipped away Liandrin's angry shout in clouds of dirt and leaves and made the trees bend and groan. Horses reared and whinnied shrilly, and one of the women reached out and fastened something around Egwene's neck. Cloak flapping like a sail, Egwene braced against the wind and tugged at what felt like a collar of smooth metal. It would not budge. Under her frantic fingers, it felt all of one piece, though she knew it had to have some kind of clasp. The silvery coils the woman had carried now trailed over her shoulder, their other end joining a bracelet on the woman's left wrist. Balling her fist tightly, Egwene hit the woman as hard as she could, right in her eye, and staggered and fell to her knees herself, head ringing. It felt as if a large man had struck her in the face.
So there's a couple of things going on there. You definitely brought up a few as you were reading. There's the man yelling a curse getting stabbed by Min.
Yeah. So he grabs Min, and Min pulls out a knife and stabs him in the hand.
The woman screaming, I think that's just like Nynaeve and Elayne, possibly Min as well.
Probably. We know as soon as the people that Nynaeve feels like she needs to protect are threatened, she is unapologetically enraged.
And then immediately that gale springs up. And that gale we think is Nynaeve channeling.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
I also noticed that some of the soldiers were cursing and picking themselves up off the ground. So whatever Nynaeve did was a strong enough wind not to just bend trees and pick up dirt, but it knocked armored soldiers off of their horses or their feet.
Well, she did that to Min in the White Tower right before they left. Remember? A
wind, not a push of air, but a wind.
She
so
used
strong.
winds and she knocked Min off of her seat when Min made her angry.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same thing she does here to the soldiers.
Except she knocks over, it only says some of the soldiers, but I imagine it's quite a few of them.
So Nynaeve and Elayne flee after the wind.
Yeah.
Min gets hit on the back of the head by the guy she stabbed.
Right.
And Egwene is collared. And so when she punches Rena, she gets a black eye.
Yeah. They both get a black eye.
Yeah.
I am proud of Egwene that her first instinct was to turn around and punch the woman in the face.
Good for her.
Good for her.
When someone locks a collar around your neck, you should turn around and punch them in the face. Min cut Elbar's hand.
I'm saying stabbed. I don't know exactly what happened, but I think he says she cut me. And later in the conversation between Elayne and Nynaeve, Elayne says that Min, I guess the guy tried to grab Elayne and Min cut the hand that was grabbing Elayne, and she just ran. So she essentially freed Elayne. Which, I don't know if she was thinking in that moment, but it's pretty smart releasing two powerful channelers to come back. Now they have these allies running around in the woods who are being pursued.
And I don't know if Min thought about that or just instinctively saw someone grabbing
her friend
and cut them.
Probably not. There wasn't really enough time.
And so the reason that Egwene feels like she got hit by a large man is because of the damage amplification. Because when you hit somebody who's wearing your Adom, you get double the effect.
Right. So the Sul'dam got punched in the face by a smallish woman, whereas Egwene essentially got hit by a big dude.
Or three smallish women.
Yeah. But they both got a black eye, so
yep.
I'm proud of Egwene. Your first lesson, she said emphatically. There was no animosity in her voice, but that almost sounded like friendliness. I will not punish you further this time, since I should have been on guard with the newly caught Damane. Know this, you are Damane, a leashed one, and I am Sul'dam, a holder of the leash. When Damane and Sul'dam are joined together, whatever hurt the Sul'dam feels, the Damane feels twice over, even to death. So she goes on to say, basically, you had better protect me with your life, because if I die while we're linked, you also die.
If I get hurt badly, you get hurt really badly. Aradia is pointing out that Perrin actually taught Egwene how to punch.
Oh, really? Good job, Perrin. Good job, Egwene, for paying attention. This is a surreal way for RJ to explore slavery. It's really dark. The Damane thing is really dark.
Yeah. Now I want to talk a moment about how this sort of alters the trajectory of Egwene's path. That it really does create for her a trauma that she has to deal with. And I think it's part of what drives her to be so successful is that she feels the only way to ensure something like this doesn't happen again is to learn everything she possibly can.
I think that's a big part of it. A lot happens here, and you're right. The Egwene's being enslaved and tortured, tortured.
And you're losing your purpose in life. That's so damaging. You lose your personality, your goals. I mean, it's...
That the experience changes her forever and how she views things. She's also, I always cite this as a time of one of the times that Egwene is stretched. She stretches her abilities in her training under the Seanchan, where, you know, in a little bit here, Sul'dam tries to get her to channel at like a few hundred yards, which is something she's never done before. And they teach her all sorts of things.
They're basically rushing her. They're pushing her in a way that makes her more powerful more quickly.
And the Sul'dam discover her talent for earth and metals.
Absolutely.
Doesn't I think Egwene gets a pudding or something like that when they discover that they discover that she can sense the metals under the earth. So basically she can like point to where a mine should be made. And I think that's how much information they get.
And that's rare among females, the sensitivity to earth. That's something that she has that not very many else do.
Her Sul'dam is very pleased. She's like, oh, you're going to be...
And that is why they end up scheduling her to go back to Seanchan.
You're going to be an expensive asset.
Exactly. Oh, so it's interesting that apparently because the Edam makes it so you can't draw too much, the forcing's a little more safe, that you can force Sul'dam.
I didn't know that. Do we know that for a fact? Just curious, because that makes so much sense. Because like I was saying before, I often cite this as a time where Egwene becomes a much more powerful channeler.
So it's because the bracelet and collar act like an artificial link, and when you're linked, you can't pull more power through somebody.
Oh, I never knew that. That's cool. And it makes a ton of sense.
So we introduce ourselves to Rena, who is kind of awful.
She doesn't want to tell Rena her name, but Rena tortures Egwene a little with the false pain that she can make through the Edam link. And she finally says her real name, which Rena's going to allow her to keep. Egwene, Rena said. That is a good name. And to Egwene's horror, Rena patted her on the head as she would a dog. That, she realized, was what she detected in the woman's voice, a certain goodwill for a dog in training, not quite the friendliness one might have toward another human being.
And one thing about Rena, she is later collared. She's one of the two Aes Sedai that is collared by Mat. One of
the Sul'dam?
Yeah, she's one of the few Sul'dam that's collared as they're escaping.
Yeah.
And then she's discovered as being collared and not allowed to be complete, as she calls it, and have any Damane and not be controlled any Damane. And then later, Mat uses her to rescue the Aes Sedai and escape from Ebu Dar.
Gotcha.
And then she joins them in the traveling show.
Wait, but is she one of the ones that's collared?
Yeah.
But she's not kept collared?
She's let free. She's basically discovered by Alwyn, and then Suroth basically knows about this whole thing, that the Sul'dam can be collared. And so she's not allowed to train anymore.
I see. And I see here Suroth wants to keep it a secret that Sul'dam can be held by Adam.
Mm-hmm. And so she sort of covers it up and lets the two free.
Egwene asks Min if she's all right. Sitting slowly back on her heels, Min nodded, then put a hand to her head as if she wished she had not moved. Jagged lightning crackled across the clear sky, then struck among the trees some distance off. Egwene jumped, and suddenly smiled. Nynaeve was still free, and Elayne. If anyone could free her and Min, Nynaeve could.
So we know that lightning is Nynaeve, definitely, being pissed. We notice Min is sort of cradling her head because she got knocked on the noggin.
Yeah. Suroth steps down and approaches Liandrin. You were to bring me 2, Suroth said. Instead I have only 1, while 2 run loose. One of them more powerful by far than I was led to believe. She will attract every patrol of ours within 2 leagues. I brought you 3, Liandrin said calmly. If you cannot manage to hold them, perhaps our master should find another among you to serve him.
So this is the first mention of our master, who we think is Ishamael, Baalzamon.
Yeah. Lightning flashed again in the near distance, and moments later, something roared like thunder not far from where it struck. A cloud of dust rose into the air. Neither Liandrin nor Suroth took any notice.
Just random battle, Aes Sedai battle going on in the background. No big deal.
And I like that Suroth and Liandrin are, I'm imagining, staring each other down, having this intense conversation.
Oh,
and
totally.
Shit's exploding all around them.
And Suroth threatens to add Liandrin to the pile and collar her as well.
Liandrin's face did not change, but Egwene saw a nimbus abruptly glow around her. Beware, High Lady, Rena called. She stands ready.
Which should be our first clue that Rena is a channeler.
Yeah.
Because she sees the nimbus spring up around her, and the only people we've seen be able to do that are channelers.
But, of course, we know that all the Sul'dam can channel. They're just ones who would had to have been taught.
Yeah, they don't have the spark. By being attached to the collar, having the wrist on, they sort of eventually train themselves to perceive channeling, but it's not something that it's something that they feel themselves. It's not something they're feeling through the Adom.
Right. You will make no move against me, Liandrin. Our master would disapprove, as I am surely needed here more than you, and you fear him more than you fear being made Damane. Liandrin smiled. And you, Suroth, fear him more than you fear me burning you to a cinder where you stand. They continue having this standoff, and a tall leather leaf, perhaps a mile away, suddenly became a roaring torch. This grows tiresome, Suroth said. Elbar, recall them.
And I think the fire was Elayne.
Was it? Oh, yes, I think we find that out later.
They have a discussion that Nynaeve was doing the lightning and Elayne was doing the fires.
But doesn't Elayne say that she basically just accidentally lit some trees on fire?
I think so.
She wasn't able to be really very effective.
It's distracting.
Yeah.
When random trees around you start going up, I think I'd be a little distracted.
You must find the woman Nynaeve, Liandrin said sharply. Elayne is of no importance, but both the women and this girl here must be taken with you on your ships when you sail. I know very well what has been commanded, Marath Damane.
So again, that's just Ishamael's orders saying, I want these girls out of here. They're from Rand's village. Get them off this continent. I do think, and again, this is headcanon, that the girls are important to Rand, and that there's a prophecy, a dark prophecy, that they will be important, and they're trying to be gotten rid of in order to undercut Rand in this early stage.
I'm inclined to agree, because if anything, Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elayne are all important in some way. Disappearing the daughter heir of Andor could be exploited by the Friends of the Dark and the Chosen. That would create a lot of chaos and mistrust.
But that was a total accident. They weren't trying to disappear the daughter heir.
Oh, no. And Liandrin even says Elayne is not important.
Right. I think it's the other two
let
that
her
are.
go free. It's Nynaeve and Egwene, which tells me that, they're both really important. Egwene reunites the tower. She kills at least one of the Forsaken. Well, not kills, but
gets rid of the Black
Ajah. Hunts them for a lot of the series.
And Nynaeve
is half responsible for cleansing Saidin, which is the only time Ishamael puts a hit out on Rand, because it's that important. He's like, yeah, go ahead, kill him, even though it'll kill me.
I'm nodding.
Yeah.
I honestly think the cleansing of the Source is one of the few actual victories the Light has before the end of the series.
Yeah.
Other than the killing of some of the Forsaken. But even that isn't necessarily a victory for the Light, because the Dark One likes to have his Forsaken sort of picking each other off. And if Rand had turned, he would have gladly sacrificed all his Forsaken, including the female ones, to make Rand kill them, in terms of making Rand feel bad.
Yeah.
I often think that's the Dark One's main goal, is just to make Rand feel bad.
Suroth sniffed. I will not remain here to find this Nynaeve. My usefulness to our master will be at an end if Turok hands me over to the Seekers for the truth. The woman will not remain free for long. Neither of them will. When we sail again, we will take with us every woman on this miserable spit of land who can channel even slightly, leashed and collared. If you wish to remain and search for her, do so. But patrols will be here soon.
A little bit arrogant.
And it's the whole reason that Egwene is freed.
Yeah.
That Elayne and Nynaeve are out there.
And they do manage to escape detection for a while.
And kill quite a few soldiers. I think we see 3 dead later.
Oh, just from this incident here?
Just from this incident,
yes,
yeah.
Yes. And I also know, remember the recall we find out later happens, the soldiers can actually see Elayne.
Yeah.
And like they hear the horn and they just turn around and head back.
Mm-hmm.
I might do that too if there was a channeler that had killed 3 of my buddies. I might be like, whoop, horn, gotta go. Saved by the bell. Saved by the horn.
It looks like Nynaeve was close to winning that fight. You know, her skills in woodcraft would help her out a lot in this situation. She also notes at some point later when she's talking to Elayne that she isn't sure if she killed the Sul'dam and Damane or not. She said she knows that she at least knocked them over with one of the lightning strikes.
I don't think she killed them.
No, I think because those are this linked set that we see right there.
Okay.
That are coming back with the dead bodies. So she just maybe injures them a little, but it doesn't actually kill them. Although I'd like to think that an enraged Nynaeve and even an incompetent Elayne are enough to maybe win that fight.
Oh, sure. I'm guessing the only reason they weren't killed is because she missed with the lightning.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was just probably slightly, it wasn't far enough away to knock them down, but not close enough to kill them.
Yeah. And the only thing I have for the next couple of pages is basically Rena talking to Egwene. Oh, the guy threatening to kill Min, and Egwene begs for Min's life.
Mm-hmm. And this is Elbar, the
Yeah.
one who blew the horn, and he's the one who had Elayne, and then Min reached out and cut his hand
Yeah.
so Elayne could get away.
And Elbar wants revenge, and he basically asks Suroth permission to cut off Min's head when Egwene interrupts and says, please, don't, she's my friend. And Suroth says, well, how about I keep her alive and you do what you're told?
It's pretty smart. It's basically using something to ensure her good behavior.
Yeah.
And they can always kill Min later.
Right. If this Damane proves a disappointment, perhaps then I will let you have the head of the girl. We see Egwene getting punished several times.
For calling attention to herself, having the High Lady speak to her. She gets beaten for that.
Yeah. But eventually they have conversation here.
Yeah, Min tries to stop it, and then that sort of like the unseen blows go on a little bit longer, just as if to prove that Min's interference wouldn't make a difference. Such a bully technique, like beating somebody up and just being like, stop. And you're like, well, I'm not stopping because you want me to, but I'll stop.
Egwene adroitly asks who their master is, Liandrin and Suroth. And Rena basically just says the affairs of the blood are not any of your concern, and explains to her what her conduct should be in these situations in the future.
She doesn't say, yeah, he's a dark friend. He's one of the Forsaken. We're evil.
I mean, they probably don't know. Someone like Rena wouldn't know.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, Rena really is like, I think they say something about it later, which is like, the High Lady will tell me what she wants me to know. And other than that, I just don't worry about it. And that's how you stay safe in the Seanchan Empire.
Suroth will tell me what she wants me to know, and I will tell you what I want you to know. Just like this, that's how this is going to work. So
Rena's just following orders. I've heard that excuse before.
And then, in response to Egwene's question, this is a horrible thing. How can you do this to anyone? What diseased mind ever thought of it? Rena goes on. We get a long explanation of where the Adam came from, that the first person who made it called themselves Aes Sedai. When Luther Pendrag Mondwyn, son of Hawkwing, first faced the armies of the night, he found many among them who called themselves Aes Sedai. They contended for power among themselves and used the one power on the field of battle. One such, a woman named Diane, who thought she could do better serving the emperor, he was not the emperor then, of course, since he had no Aes Sedai in his armies, came to him with a device she had made, the first Adam, fastened to the neck of one of her sisters. Though that woman did not want to serve Luthair, the Adam required her to serve. Diane made more Adam. The first Sul'dam were found, and women captured who called themselves Aes Sedai discovered that they were in fact only Mareth Damane.
So we get a little bit of history here with Luthair Pendragon, who we know crossed the ocean, and he faces the armies of the Night. So the armies of the Night must have been the local armies.
I think so.
The Seanchan armies, and they had Aes Sedai in them, but Arthur Hawkwing had none with him. So
Luthair had none with him.
Yeah, sorry, Luthair had none with him. So what we can assume then is Diane was probably from a part of the world that sort of maintained its own little sect of Aes Sedai after the breaking, and essentially Luthar came over and wipes them out, and through the spreading of the Adam is able to leash and collar all of the Aes Sedai on the continent.
Slowly.
We
also know that with the Adam, he's able to conquer the other armies of the many nations that were the part of the Seanchan continent, which is where the Seanchan got Grom and Torakin and all the different creatures. It seems like without the Adam, the army would have failed to take over the continent.
Oh, without a doubt. Here, he was not the emperor, of course, since he had no Aes Sedai in his armies. I think that's interesting that he couldn't... Being an emperor means that you have a Dom.
I can see, because of the way history went, why they would see it that way, where before that, the Seanchan army or the Hawkwing's army wasn't doing particularly well before they got the Adam. And then once they could start collaring channelers, they were able to slowly begin conquering these other armies.
Notice these Aes Sedai never had the Three Oaths. Because that came along after the breaking. That was the result of the White Tower springing up. And so there may be an argument to be made that because the Aes Sedai on the Seanchan continent continued to fight, they were seen as weapons, and someone came up with a way to counter that weapon. And that's how they became Mareth Damane. And if they hadn't been weapons or fighters, it's entirely possible that they would have just been peaceful, and they would have never been collared.
Maybe. It is said that when she herself was leashed, Diane's screams shook the towers of midnight. But of course she, too, was a Mareth Damane. And Mareth Damane cannot be allowed to run free. Perhaps you will be one of those who has the ability to make Adam. If so, you will be pampered. You may rest assured.
Oh, so terrifying. That story, it's so matter-of-fact, and it's just creating your own slavery system that you end up getting sucked into.
Yeah. And I kind of thought it was interesting here that although the Rena and Egwene don't know it yet, Egwene is one of those Mareth Damane with the ability to create Adam. She could totally do this.
Well, that's true. Elayne.
Egwene.
Doesn't Elayne make the ter'angreal?
I think she does, but I would think that Egwene would have the ability to make them. With her metal stuff, the Quendiar stuff, I just assume that she would have the ability to make it. I'm not saying she would be exceedingly great or anything, but
I actually don't think she has the talent.
Yeah,
I think making ter'angreal requires an actual talent, and I think that she does not have it.
I don't know.
Yeah, Quendiar to me is a different.
It's not
an item of power. It's a material.
So we don't see it, but I at least think that she could learn.
I disagree.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because I don't think Quendiar and ter'angreal are related at all. Do we even see any Quendiar or ter'angreal?
I mean, they're described similarly, but I don't think they have exactly the same properties.
The only thing I can think of is maybe the seals would be considered Quendiar or ter'angreal.
Yeah, they're an item made with the power that has a purpose to do a thing that's kind of similar.
They're not using the power actively. They're just sort of, they're focus points for the shield. So one of the thoughts I often have with the Dark One breaking out of his prison is how the 7 seals often seem to me an awful lot like tied off shields when Rand is shielded and he's trying to get out of the box. Those little knots that he attacks.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it feels like the Quendiar seals exactly are those little knots that he ties off. And what the Dark One is doing is using the true power to slowly break those knots and crush the Quendiar the seals.
I'm nodding.
And in the same way that we see sort of Rand is able to thread through the little knot and eventually break it apart.
Once they're tied off.
Yeah.
That's such a fun scene.
Oh, such a great scene.
Rhaena tells Egwene that men can't be collared, they have to be killed. But also that if a man holds the bracelet and puts it on a Damane, they sometimes both die, but not all the time, which tells me that if it's a male channeler, they die.
Right. Well, a male with the potential to be a channeler.
Right.
So there's 3 kinds of males, right? There's males who can't channel, males who are born with the potential, and males who are born with the spark.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, those who can't channel are normal people. Those who have the spark are killed, and those who have the ability to be trained are the ones who would die screaming if you put the collar on them.
Right.
And in the same way that there are 3 kinds of women. There's normal women who can channel with the spark, they become Damane, and then there are women who can be trained, and they become Sul'dam.
From time to time, the Empress plays with lords by linking them to a Damane. It makes the lords sweat and entertains the court of the 9 moons. The lord never knows until it is done whether he will live or die, and neither does the Damane. Her laugh was vicious.
That is pretty cruel.
Yeah.
And what did we say? The population of channelers is like 1 in 20 or something like that? 1 in 100? What do we...
I thought it was like 5%.
5%, yes.
So 1 in 20.
1 in 20, yep.
One of the other Sul'dam says to Rhaena, I have not seen any training at all so far, Rhaena. Only a great deal of chatter, as if you and this Damane were girlhood friends. Perhaps it is time to see what she can do, Rhaena said, studying Egwene. Do you have enough control yet to channel at that distance? She pointed to a tall oak standing alone on a hilltop. Egwene says she doesn't know, she can't do it.
Yeah, she's just like...
She just doesn't want to follow the orders, is the way I saw that.
I also see it as she's been told by the White Tower that that's not something she should or could do. And so she sort of has these limits imposed on her by the White Tower, and Rhaena is forcing her to try something beyond her comfort zone. So I think that when we talk about sort of the stretching of Egwene and how that occurs with Seanchan, here's an example of where it really starts, where she's really using way more power at a greater distance than she ever would before.
Yeah. But we don't see her try yet. We see her refuse and be beaten.
Right.
This is also where we see Rhaena says, when one has been a Sul'dam long enough, she told Egwene, one learns to tell many things about Damane, even without the bracelet. But with the bracelet, one can always tell whether a Damane has tried to channel. You must never lie to me, or to any Sul'dam, not even by a hair.
I think by that, she's saying you can tell whether Damane has embraced the source.
Well, yeah, she says 2 things. One is that if you're linked to a Sul'dam, they can always tell if you've tried to channel. But some Sul'dam can tell even if they aren't wearing the bracelet.
And to me, again, that points directly at them being channelers.
Right.
Because
that's how they can sense the power.
Exactly. They're not using the bracelet to use the Damane's sense. They have their own. I noticed that one of the Sul'dam starts torturing Min a little bit when Min tries to help Elayne. Dimly she was aware of Min shouting angrily and trying to ride to her side, of Alwyn tearing Min's reins from her hands, of another Sul'dam speaking sharply to her Damane, who looked at Min, and then Min was yelling too.
The Sul'dam has her Damane attack Min.
Exactly.
Basically.
Instead of using a collar on her, they just use the one power.
Yeah, because she can't be collared.
Right.
It is good that you have spirit, Rhaena says to Egwene calmly. The best Damane are those who have spirit to be shaped and molded. Egwene squeezed her eyes shut. She wished she could get close to her ears, too, to shut out Renna's voice. I have to get away. I have to. But how? Nynaeve, help me. Light. Somebody help me. You will be one of the best, Renna said in tones of satisfaction. Her hand stroked Egwene's hair. A mistress soothing her dog.
As I sit here petting Timber, stroking his hair.
Timber will be one of the best.
And there is a lot of parallels. They treat the Sul'dam like dogs. The collar even sort of functions like a dog collar.
Exactly like a dog collar.
The way it's got those clasps and the way they describe, like you squeeze two sides of it and it slides apart.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is exactly the way I open up Timber's dog collar.
Yeah. I mean wrist to throat, it's
Totally.
It's exactly the same.
And then the training with the treats and everything. I mean, they treat them as animals.
Which eventually works on everyone.
Training is effective. Pavlov had his shit together. He knew what he was talking about.
Nynaeve leaned out of her saddle to peer around the screen of prickly leaf shrubs. Scattered trees met her eyes, some with leaves turning color. The expanses of grass and brush between seemed empty. Nothing moved that she could see, except the thinning column of smoke, wavering in a breeze from the leatherleaf. That had been her work, the leatherleaf, and once the lightning called from a clear sky, and a few things she had not thought to try until those women tried them on her.
All right, so I said the leatherleaf was Elayne. I was wrong.
Well, I also noticed that Nynaeve learns a couple of tricks in this chapter. I don't think she says exactly what. I think she did the lightning instinctively, the wind and the lightning instinctively.
I'm nodding.
But the fire and whatnot that the Sul'dam and Damane were launching at her, she learned right there on the spot.
The way I read it is the first two things, that had been her work, the leatherleaf, and once lightning called from the clear sky.
Yeah.
Those two seem to be things that she knows how to do and were her work. And a few other things she had not thought to try until those two. So it seems like there's a few other things she learns, but those first two were hers all along.
Yeah. And that just speaks to Nynaeve's ability in the power and her strength in the power, and that we see with these really strong channelers, generally they can learn these weaves very quickly.
As soon as she sees someone else do it.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Now I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so that's why, I think Egwene goes through a lot of intense training. Nynaeve just sees other people channel.
She just learns.
She just learns.
She had at least knocked the two women down with that lightning strike, and she had seen one of the soldiers, or his body rather, burn from the ball of fire she made and hurled at them. But she had not seen any of the strangers at all in some time now.
Basically since the horn was blown.
The hunting horn that recalls the troops.
Mm-hmm.
In that first fury of knowing that Liandrin had betrayed them, Saidar had been there almost before she knew it, and the one power flooding her. It had seemed she could do anything, and as long as they had chased her, rage at being hunted like an animal had fueled her. But then she goes on to think that now that nobody's chasing her, she's just afraid, and now she can't channel at all. And then Elayne appears.
It's interesting. Nynaeve stays hidden because she has the forest lore, and Elayne just walks out in the open, and Nynaeve sees her.
Yeah.
Just a little note here that Nynaeve sneaks up on Elayne pretty much without trying.
Nynaeve is a magic using ranger, basically.
Yep.
She would be a fun character to roleplay.
Nynaeve?
Someone write us about your Dungeons and Dragons adventure with Nynaeve as a base for a character. Because I'm sure that has happened. Someone has to have done that.
Say one thing, do something else entirely. Here we get Elayne saying, there were two men following me. They ran off as soon as the horn sounded, even though they could see me.
Yeah.
We sort of just get the opening scene from these two's perspective. And sort of we've gone over what happened with that, where Min cut the hand that was holding Elayne, and that's when she ran.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that was Elbar's hand.
Yeah, Elayne says she ran.
And Nynaeve says, you did Elaine's feeling bad that she ran, but Nynaeve's like, you did the right thing. We wouldn't have been any help if we'd stayed. Now that we're free, we can go back and try and help them.
Yeah. Nynaeve also adds, they seem to be interested in Egwene and me for some reason. They might not have cared whether you remained alive or not. Saying it's much better that you're free because I think they might have just killed you.
Yeah, well, they almost did that to Min. And she's trying to figure out why did Liandrin do this? It seems like, yeah, she's a dark friend. and it's all about being the relationship to Rand.
I love Nynaeve. She's really one of my favorite characters. If I had died trying to help them, Elayne began, you'd be dead. Nynaeve finishes her sentence, and little good you'd be then. I mean, we went over that. I just liked the dialogue. Yeah.
And Nynaeve says they're heading to Falma. Falma's like the westernmost point of the continent. That's why we head west. Not that hard to figure out.
Of course, because Nynaeve is there, we know which way is west is, or that's probably the only reason Elayne knows which way west is. I'm assuming. Elayne's educated and all, but Nynaeve has been walking around in the forest her whole life. That was her career. Imagine that's where a lot of her plants come from. Either gathered wild or gardened.
Oh, sure. I imagine she spent a lot of time out in the forest gathering herbs. And learning to hunt and track with her father.
Yeah.
Until he died. And they're smart enough to jump into local clothing.
Also Nynaeve's idea. She's like, we'll stand out if we don't buy new dresses. Or if we don't change our clothes. And I really liked that. Elayne's like, well, I have like 10 gold and a handful of silver. We'll only last a week or two. And Nynaeve's like, oh, okay.
That's more money than I've ever seen in my life.
Try a few months, rich girl. Also, we're not going to buy dresses. We're just going to bring the dresses that we're wearing and trade them for crummy ones. So we'll blend right into the regular folk.
They have super expensive dresses. They have like queen's dresses.
She also says something like, if we just cut the pearls off the dress I'm wearing right now, I can buy us 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm. And Nynaeve does
dresses.
Underestimate how expensive things have gotten. Things are more expensive in this town than she was expecting. So
she's also country and comes from a place where they produce these things.
It lands somewhere between the two.
Nynaeve says, we're going to have to be cautious. The Aes Sedai we know can recognize a woman who can channel just by being within arm's length of her. These Aes Sedai may be able to pick us out of a crowd if they are looking for us. We had better assume they are.
If they get close enough, definitely.
Yeah.
They do a surprisingly good job of avoid getting caught. I think it's because they're in a population that's already been inspected.
That's a good point. That's probably why. It's because nobody's checking anymore.
Right.
Because they've already been checked.
And it's assumed they would have been checked at the border by one of the patrols before they got anywhere close. But since they skipped the border and went right into Falma, basically, city. Not quite the city, but I think just, the whole area.
And this is where we see, although they don't seem to come to any conclusions, Elayne says, do you think it was all lies, Nynaeve? What Liandrin told us about Rand being in danger and the others? I said I do not lie. It was Nynaeve's turn to be silent, remembering Shiriam telling her about the oaths. Telling her of the oaths the woman took on being raised to full sisterhood. Oaths spoken holding a ter'angreal that bound her to keep them. To speak no word that is not true. But Nynaeve just kind of suspects that Liandrin only twisted her words and didn't lie. Which, from our analysis of the last couple episodes, we can't find any outright lies.
No, it seems like she did just twist her words really hard.
Yeah.
But she twisted them to lie without lying.
Yes, the boys are being hunted. Yes, they're in trouble from the Black Ajah. Do you want to help? And the girls are just like, yes, then follow me. She doesn't say...
Following me
She doesn't say
help.
We're going to Rand to help him.
Right.
She never says that.
No.
Very clever.
And I don't know if, she says out loud that she thinks Rand is comfortable with Lord Algamar and Faldara.
Yeah.
But she thinks, I can't worry about him now. And so I'm wondering if maybe she's just putting on a brave face and she thinks that he is in trouble and is being hunted and is just like, well, we can't worry about that right now. Out
sure.
loud.
Also, that's right after Elaine's asking, do you think all of that Liandrin told us was a lie?
Mm-hmm.
And Nynaeve, I think she's putting a brave face on it, like you said.
They do pretty quickly come to the conclusion that Liandrin is black, though. I mean, before they get back to the White Tower, I thought they figured that out.
I think so. She's got to be.
Certainly when they're talking to Su'an, they know she's black. They talk about her being black.
Yeah.
That's why Su'an sends them out to hunt the black.
Nynaeve booted the mare to a quick trot, and Elayne yelped and caught at her cloak. Nynaeve told herself that she would take a turn riding behind and not complain if Elayne put the horse to a gallop, but for the most part, she ignored the gasps of the woman bouncing behind her. She was too busy hoping that by the time they reached Falm, she could stop being afraid and start being angry. The breeze freshened, cool and brisk, with a hint of cold yet to come.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
They're late autumn, and so I think he's trying to show you the timeline there, that it's still a little bit early for a little bit before Rand shows up.
Imagine that smell in the air on a fall evening. Even if it was a warm day, you can tell that it's going to be cold.
It's crisp
from the way it smells.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who love Spotify.
Yeah, a lot of people are really on Spotify, so I'm happy we got on there.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, there's a YouTube channel now too, guys. If you want to listen to us on YouTube for whatever reason. Wait, is that complete yet?
Yeah, it's out there.
So are all the podcasts on it? Or just all of it?
Yeah.
I haven't even looked at it, but we're on YouTube. So we got a couple of people asked me about it a while ago, and I suggested it. Seth went and did it recently.
Actually, I do want to get 100 subscribers so I can actually pick a channel name. So I would have, if anyone out there wants to just go and click subscribe. Oh God, I'm one of those people. Click subscribe on YouTube.
No, it's fine. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You don't have to watch it.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Just subscribe. You get certain benefits. Oh, but yeah, I was saying some people from a different Discord channel that I was talking to were saying that they listen to most of their podcasts on YouTube, and they were like, how do we find you on YouTube? And I was like, which is a lot of how Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast has progressed. How do we send you money? Here.
Yeah, let's make a Patreon page. No, I would say that is a huge point that we haven't brought up enough, is how listener-driven this podcast is. Because most of what we've done has been in reaction to the listeners making requests.
I think that's why we've been fairly successful. And also, I throw it out there all the time. If you guys want us to do something that we're not doing, just say it. Mm-hmm. We can probably do it, whatever it is. Like the Bitcoin wallet thing.
I need to add a few pieces of merch. Varen knows. Ogira people too. It's not like we're trying to be accessible. We're just really bored. So we like to hang out in the Discord channel, and yeah, we're just big nerds with not much of a life. So, well, at least me. Patrick's got a life.
A little bit. Just a job and a girlfriend and podcasts and books.
My social life's in the shitter right now.
Well,
sometimes there are ups and downs. Yeah, introvert, definitely.
I always thought of myself as one, but maybe I'm not. I don't know.
You are. You need time to recharge after you hang out with people.
Yeah.
Or else you get angry.
Totally.
Yeah.
I don't have anxiety. I can stand up in front of a group of people and speak or introduce myself and ask a question to a stranger. I don't care.
So I would consider those two very different things. Public anxiety and introversion. Introverts like hanging out with people. They just need time to recharge. Whereas extroverts recharge from being with people. Versus someone who has anxiety is,
Oh yeah, that does totally nothing for me. It's just a thing that I'm capable of. I don't get anything out of it.
I'm willing to bet that the majority of Wheel of Time fans would fall in the introvert category. If for nothing else, then you have to be able to sit alone for enough hours to read the whole series.
Yeah, right. Which is a lot of hours.
Exactly. So I would not be surprised if the vast majority of our listeners fell in the introvert category.
And probably this is going to be a sweeping generalization, but everybody who's this into fantasy and sci-fi, I saw Stormblast here say we have to escape in the Discord channel. And I think that's why I got into it as a kid, because it's like a world that you can escape to Yes.
It's certainly not everybody, but it's definitely, I would say, I would guess the majority of our listeners fall in that category.
I also still to this day think books are superior to most forms of entertainment. The Wheel of Time is like a movie that lasts for hundreds of hours. You can just keep going back to it. That's what I love so much about it. It's a great movie that like almost doesn't end.
And since we just keep rereading it, it definitely doesn't end.
Yeah. And by the time you get back to the beginning, it's been like a really long time since you read that.
It's like, it's been a year since I've read this. Yeah. I should start over again.
Forgot what happened.
We're already like, I think it's funny that I thought after this podcast I would know everything there was to know about the Wheel of Time, but I'm already like forgetting things about the Eye of the World that we talked. People are like, you pointed this out in the Eye of the World. I'm like, I did? Oh yeah, I did.
It's impossible to remember everything. Like 2,500 characters and
who knows what, when. Yeah, there's no way to know
100 different characters that have their own like perspective chapters, and I have no idea how many.
But we collectively can know it all, and I'm including all the Discord folks on there because me and Patrick know a fraction.
That is true. That's why we have so many less corrections. Like when we first started, every week we would have like 5 or 6 corrections from the last episode that people would have emailed us. But with the Discord channel, we make a mistake and then someone corrects us right away.
And then we cut out the mistake.
Yeah. So it makes it seem like we know everything. Or almost everything. I still screw stuff up.
Not saying we still don't get occasional corrections and things we get wrong, but I've stopped making it as a normal thing. Oh, yeah, the power of editing. Those of you who are live have some idea of just how much crap we cut out to create a tight episode.
Yeah.
Where it sounds like we know what we're talking about. You're not just random people on the internet, though. You're fans of the Wheel of Time, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, we're kind of friends now.
Yeah.
We're at least internet friends.
Well, and most of what I cut out is the the uhs, the spaces, the like putting around looking for answers on the internet, the things we occasionally get wrong.
Yeah.
Like always, I have to thank John Harrell for doing a lion's share of the work in the editing room. He really does make my job 100% easier.
Yeah, John's awesome. It's too bad he can never really be here live, but I understand that it's, it's like 3:00 in the morning there now, right now.
Oh, at the end of the pod, that was just, it took a lot of effort to get her to do that. And I thought it was funny because she like finished her recording, looked up at me and goes, "Was that good enough?" And I was like, "Yeah, thanks." But it's just cute, And also it's a bit of a message from me to the audience at the end of a edited session. I always have that in my heart. Was that good enough?
Yeah, we don't try to make it perfect ever. It's part of what has made Watt Spoilers, I think, popular and also possible for us to produce is that it's very much like we're two friends sitting in a basement talking about our favorite fantasy series, and that it sounds like that. We don't try to make it sound different than that. So, if we misspeak or something, we don't have to, every word doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we faked that pretty well considering how much we hate each other.
We're just in this for the cash, guys.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about dollars per hour we earn.
Oh, God, that's like
not even
pennies.
Sponsorship is funny because every time I look into it, the goalposts keep moving. As podcasts get more popular, the number of people and downloads you have to have keeps increasing. So every time I think we're close, it's like, oh, no, we're a little further away.
We're not terribly far, but...
I mean, I'd love to keep doing it ad-free, but if someone is going to give me some money to talk about it on the podcast...
As long as we can joke about now we have corporate overlords.
I mean, I think, again, if we do it, there'll be a right way to do it. It'll be a little bit making fun of the fact that we're doing an ad read. Yeah, we're not just going to read off the copy ad that they send us.
And now, a short message from the Lord of Darkness.
If we don't do this, we will suffer from a soul trap. Squarespace has my soul.
Please use Squarespace. They keep us locked in this basement. Blue Apron is people.
Blue Apron, better than a Trolloc cookpot.
Slightly.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?